This video supported in part by...
Playing VR, I tend to sweat. It gives me an edge. So King of Nerds happens to give me an edge too. Let King of Nerds give you the edge. Bye, King of Nerds.
This just in, Atari acquires the rights to Berzerk and Frenzy. And that's pretty much all we're allowed to know so far from these very, very brief articles and press release. What I'm talking about is an article from Game Informer and GameDeveloper.com, and they're quoting a press release from Atari. And effectively, I'll put the links to both the articles in the description, but if the short and long of it is, Atari announced today the acquisition of a dozen retro arcade games, including 80s classic Berzerk and Frenzy. They will seek to expand digital and physical distribution of the classic titles, create new games based on the IPs, and explore brand and merchandising collaborations. Yeah, so just a couple short sentences, but there's a lot to read in between the lines there in terms of what this could mean for us as arcade fans and collectors of toys and emulation gadgets going forward. Hey there, welcome back to Gen X Grown Up. I'm John, and I am a Gen X Grown-Up. Thank you so much for the click, and if you clicked, it's likely because you saw this news come out the other day, and like me, you're also wondering what else could this mean? You know, what is going on here? Now, Atari has long been known for putting out compilations of their arcade games, but it's the same ones over and over, right? It's Centipede and Missile Command and Asteroids and Breakout and Pong and Tempest, the things that we all know, and we love them, but there are so many other arcade games out there that are lost. They just aren't being distributed because the rights holders aren't pursuing it, or maybe they're just sitting in limbo or whatever. And so let's start with the two we know. 12 were, they said they did 12, they only announced 2. It's Berzerk and Frenzy. If you're not familiar with those, really quickly, these are both arcade games. They're kind of top-down shooters where you're a man running in a maze. Berzerk was known as the first arcade game that had speech synthesis or emulated voice sound in it.
Get a humanoid chicken, fight like a robot.
And then Frenzy was a follow-up to that. It was the sequel, came out a year or two later, and it added, it iterated on it. It added destructible walls and environments, and Evil Otto comes after you just like in Berzerk, and ricocheting bullets, all kinds of stuff. Anyway, these are great arcade games that sat in the arcades right next to the classics we talked about, the Centipedes and the Tempests of the world, or the Donkey Kongs that we're never going to see because Atari has that stuff in a vault we're not going to see. But so what this means at the face value, let's just start about what we know. Berzerk and Frenzy are now things that Atari has rights to distribute. So there's that great Atari 2600 version of Berzerk that's never been on compilations anywhere. Wow, we might start seeing that again, right? Because it was a great port, by the way. Plus, though, the article references updates to the game, updated versions and iterations on it. So, Berzerk Recharged, anybody? I mean, that sounds like a great idea. I mean, they're already kind of digging deep in their back catalog of stuff to recharge. So, I mean, if they acquire Berzerk and don't recharge it, I don't know why they're acquiring Berzerk. Quite honestly, it seems like a no-brainer. But plus, though, it makes me wonder what else could those other 10 things be. Now, the dreamer in me says, hey, maybe you get back some of your own IPs. Like, wouldn't it be nice to have Battlezone back under Atari so they can start releasing it, and Battlezone Recharging or whatever? I feel like if they had acquired Battlezone, that would have been in the headline. It wouldn't have been Berzerk or Frenzy. But so I poked around a little bit, like what else could be going on? And so Berzerk and Frenzy are both by Stern, an arcade manufacturer and distributor. Whether Atari acquired these rights from Stern themselves or whoever the Stern right holder is, I started digging into the Stern back catalog. And so what other cool arcade titles have been languishing, not being seen by us forever because nobody has the rights? Amadar, which is kind of like a maze, Pac-Man-y kind of thing where you run around. It's almost like a cross between Pac-Man and Kicks, where you try to close in the boxes and you're a gorilla, which is awesome. Pooyan, another great Stern classic. It's kind of the three little pigs. You're the mama pig trying to shoot down these big bad wolves that are coming after your kids. Bagman, which is, I guess it's kind of like a Donkey Kong Me Too. But it's running around in a platform maze, and you're collecting these bags of money, trying to get them out of the catacombs underground. A gold medalist, which is kind of like a track and field on steroids. Jungler, which is a really interesting, like slither and gun, not run and gun, slither and gun kind of serpent game, where there's other snakes in a maze and you chase them down. Lost Tomb is another kind of like adventure game. So there are a lot of great ones. Plus, I never remember playing them a lot, but they had a couple of Laserdisc games, Cliffhanger and Gold to Go. Not hugely popular. I mean, I guess Cliffhanger kind of was, but those, again, these are all Stern titles that, in the back of my head, I'm like, well, if you're getting a couple of Stern titles, maybe you're just talking about the crown jewels and you're not talking about these others. These are all great ones to get. On top of that, Stern also distributed a few Konami titles that have not seen the light of day. Look, we've gotten so many Dig Dugs and Pac-Mans and, Q*berts and everything. Like, we love those games, but we've seen them a million times now. There's so many great arcade games out there. There are 3 that I spotted that Stern distributed for Konami that maybe could be on this list, which include Tutankhamun, which is the only shoot left and right underground kind of puzzle maze game. And then 2 very similar games, favorites of mine, Scramble and Super Cobra. Now, both of these are bullets and bombs, and you're in these underground layers, these catacombs, trying to get to the end to blow up the base at the end, and just kind of circles back, but great arcade games. And wouldn't it be great to have a Scramble Recharge? Wouldn't it be great to have a Scramble tabletop arcade toy from My Arcade or somewhere, right? Now, I don't know if any of these are included in the deal of a dozen, but if I'm looking for an obvious inclusion, if you got them from the Stern rights holder, these are good ones that could be included. Now, we know that clearly Atari is not doing this to be purely altruistic, right? I mean, they're a company that is trying to grow. They're kind of bleeding money. They had a bad fourth quarter. First quarter's not looking awesome. They're reorganizing their hardware division. But they're not giving up, because clearly they're working to acquire these licenses. And they're not just doing it out of the goodness of their heart to go, hey, don't you guys miss Berzerk? I'm sure they see a path for revenue in there. And that could be very good for us, because if they do see a path that's financially viable, and they're liberating these games that have previously been just languishing in obscurity and not available to us to play outside of just finding the ROMs and emulating on your computer, it could mean the end of seeing the same 20, Namco, Taito, Data East Atari things over and over and over. This could be a model for them. They could be, now they're going to say we're doing this out of the goodness of our heart, but we know that they need to make money. But if this works for them, they could go to other rights holders. What other great arcade games are floating around out there that just absolutely we would love to play, but either forgot about or they've been out of mind so long that we have given up on? Now, again, we know Nintendo classics, and Nintendo has those in a vault with an armed guard, but there are other great distributors in arcade games that used to sit right shoulder to shoulder with the classics we talk about all the time that nobody talks about anymore. It's an untapped market that Atari could become the liberator of these games. And not for nothing, but look, they just acquired Berzerk and Frenzy, and who knows what else. There's another 10 or so that they have this deal going with My Arcade already to put out this Game Station Plus later. And now maybe the runway is too short. Maybe it's this change happened, but could we see like a Berzerk on this Game Station Plus with My Arcade? Could we see these new titles become micro players with real arcade ROMs in them? Oh, wouldn't that be just, be still my beating heart. That would be phenomenal. Look, this is all speculation. I know we know Berzerk and Frenzy. I'm super curious what else is going to happen. I'm going to keep an eye on this, but I wanted to start the conversation because I and my friends and you guys who view GenXGrownUp are the people that would be most interested in this. And I want to hear, what things you think. If I hear a little update, I'll put it in a pinned comment down beneath this video. If there's a bigger update, I will put out a update video just like this one to share that news. I'll keep an eye on this, but man, let me know what you think. Let me know what your dream games would be in these other 10 that Atari would add to their arsenal of titles that they could absolutely position themselves as, the king of classic arcade games and start sucking up these other titles that are clearly out there and available to other companies that just aren't being used. The potential is phenomenal. I could be overestimating and setting my sights too high, but what do you think? Let me know in the comments. I really appreciate you watching. Obviously, I'll throw links over my shoulder here and here to some other news we've been covering. I certainly hope you enjoyed something in this video. I can't wait, though, to talk to you again next time. Bye-bye.